Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we're discussing the third and final game of this Sharks rookie face-off tournament between the San Jose Sharks and the Colorado Avalanche, in which the Sharks have lost 7-4. It was kind of a crazy game, to be honest. Definitely a bit more interesting to watch than the previous game against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Avalanche took a 2-0 lead before the Sharks rattled off 4 straight goals, coming 2 from Weisblatt, 1 from Timor Ibrahimov, as well as 1 from Kyle Topping. But then, once it was 4-2 San Jose, the Avalanche responded. They scored 1 at the end of the second period to make it 4-3, then scored 2 in the third to make it 5-4 Avalanche, including 1 shorthanded in the last couple of minutes of the game, and then 2 empty netters to make it 7-4. So a pretty back and forth game, to say the least. Moving into the players to talk about, at the top of this list is once again Ryan Merkley, and it's quite interesting because I remember at the time when Ryan Merkley was drafted by the San Jose Sharks, he obviously came with a lot of issues as a player with him, and people were talking about how the San Jose Sharks were the perfect team to have drafted a player like Ryan Merkley because they have a lot of veteran presence and he can be mentored by a player like Brent Burns. Well, whether or not that actually happened, we can say that the mentoring by Brent Burns pretty much bore fruit here because of the fact that Ryan Merkley plays an extremely similar game to that of Brent Burns. We saw the high highs of Ryan Merkley through this game where he made that beautiful play that would eventually lead to Weisblatt's second goal of the game. But then we also saw some boneheaded defensive plays that made you wonder, like, why would he ever do such a thing? There were some plays on the power play today as well as yesterday where he kind of just gave the puck away in what seemed to be a very uninspired way, like he wasn't putting in 100% effort to try and keep the puck on his stick, and that's why it kind of just rolled off. There were also times where, once again, when the other team was rushing into the zone, he would get beat on the rush, going wide, as if he wasn't wanting to exert full energy to try and skate and keep up with the attacking player, and that attacking player was able to get around them. That happened not just in this game, but also back in that first game where he was outstanding. It probably happened maybe 3 times throughout this tournament, which is just way too much for something as simple as, defending a rush, which you're going to have to do a ton of times in every single NHL game. So it was a game where Merkley showed the good side as well as the bad side for him as a player, and while that first game was definitely there to show that it outweighed the bad side, these past couple of games it's kind of been much more even, and so it is still a question whether or not Merkley will ever be able to find that kind of balance where he can be a net positive for his team instead of a net negative. One thing that I do want to mention, oddly enough, about Ryan Merkley is that he actually was on the first power play unit with players like Eklund and Weisblatt back in that first game against the Anaheim Ducks, and that was probably the only part of the Sharks game that was actually successful there. The Sharks power play was very, very good in that first game against the Ducks, but in these past couple of games against the Golden Knights and the Avalanche, the power play has taken a step back, and for whatever reason, I don't know if this is, these two events are correlated, but Merkley was moved to the second power play unit, and Kniazev was actually put with players like Eklund and Weisblatt on the first unit. So I don't know what the reasoning behind that was, but you could definitely point to it as a reason why the Sharks power play never really looked as good as it did in that first game against the Ducks. Next, we'll be talking about William Eklund, as of course, kind of have to. And Eklund, once again in this game, showed off some smarts and some decent skills. For instance, I thought in particular in this game, his passing and vision was put very well on display. He had maybe 3 or 4 really, really nice passes in this game, sometimes cross ice and things like that, which is obviously very impressive. But once again, it was a third straight game here in this 3-game rookie tournament where Eklund wasn't really someone who blew anybody away. For instance, if someone was coming into this game not really knowing any of the Sharks players, but knowing that there was one player who was supposed to, at the very least, stand out, you probably would not have been able to pick William Eklund out of that crowd of Sharks players, because while there were a few very nice plays, there were a few very nice plays by multiple other players as well, and I just don't really think Eklund stood out as a head and shoulders above anybody else. He kind of seemed just like he kind of faded back into with the crowd of the rest of the Sharks prospects. So at the start of this tournament, I was saying maybe he could be an NHL hopeful for this upcoming season. Now at the end of this tournament, while something still could technically change in preseason, it seems pretty much likely that he's going to end up either overseas or in the AHL for this upcoming year. Moving on to talking about Ozzy Weisblatt, the first-round pick from 2020. He scored 2 goals tonight. He was once again a very effective player for the San Jose Sharks. It just seems as though that Weisblatt never really takes a shift off. It kind of is in stark contrast to the play of Ryan Merkley. Sometimes Merkley, while with the puck, he will look like he's really trying his best and really trying to make play happen. Sometimes it does look very uninspired compared to Weisblatt, who just seems always 100% keyed in onto the game, always looking for an opportunity to take a puck to the net, always looking for an opportunity to get the puck back onto his stick. And I really like that. He shows himself to be a very, very hard-working player. And while I still think that my projection of him as a middle six player for the San Jose Sharks in the future is correct, maybe leaning a bit more towards the second line, at least hopefully, he definitely looks like he's going to be a very effective player at the NHL, and it seems as though he has the very important skill sets of, that drive to make it that you really need to be able to get there as an NHL player. Next, I'll be talking about Timor Ibrahimov, kind of a very under the radar player for the San Jose Sharks. Didn't actually even play in the first game of this rookie faceoff tournament against the Anaheim Ducks. Only drew into the lineup for the game against the Golden Knights and the game here tonight. And while I didn't mention him in the game against the Golden Knights, he actually was pretty good in that one. And in tonight, he was even better, I would say. He scored a goal, of course, but he had maybe 3 or 4 really golden grade A opportunities to be able to score an extra goal in this game that he was just unable to capitalize on. So while this wasn't some sort of dominant performance by Ibrahimov, right, it wasn't like Ryan Merkley style in that first game against the Anaheim Ducks. He found himself in some great positions. He seemed like he was able to read the play and where those plays would end up, a couple of steps ahead. And so it does definitely, bode well for his future as a potential NHL player over these next couple of years. So that's definitely nice to see from a prospect that not many were expecting a lot of things from. Next, I'll be talking about Tristan Robbins, a second-round pick from 2020. He was actually moved on to the first line for this game. He played with Brandon Coe, who was also moved on to the first line, and of course William Eklund. Eklund and Weisblatt were separated for the first time in this tournament, and I thought Robbins looked pretty good in that role. He seemed very hard on the puck, which was nice to see. He won a few battles in the offensive zone to keep a puck alive. He managed to draw a penalty, potentially even 2 penalties in this game, if I'm not mistaken. And so Robbins, he wasn't a super effective, skilled, necessarily type of player. So while he was first line in this prospect game, I don't foresee him ever really being a first line player at the NHL level. I do think he showed some pretty nice things that could, also potentially bode well for him into the future as a potential NHL prospect. This is kind of a commonplace for a lot of these Sharks prospects that I'm talking about. While a few of them seem more or less destined to make it to the NHL, for instance, I do think Weisblatt will absolutely be an NHL player. When it comes to players like Ibrahimov, like Tristan Robbins, and like the last player who I'm going to be talking about, which is Adam Rashka, these are all players who I could definitely see making it to the NHL, though it's certainly no guarantee. But they did show a lot, at least in 1 or 2 or how many of these rookie faceoff games, that show that there is a possibility for them to make it. And I think that's exactly the case here for Robbins. And so finally, I will indeed talk about Rashka. He was kind of a write-off for me when he was drafted a couple of years ago, because he was drafted in the 7th round. And I actually specifically remember in my draft review video saying something along the lines of, oh, well, I don't really know much about this player as a 7th rounder, but since he's a 7th rounder, he probably won't make much of an impact. But it seems as though the Sharks are at least relatively high on him in the system. Not only does he manage to, remain in the lineup here for every single game of this rookie faceoff tournament, but he actually is getting, first power play time. I remember he was also a very effective player in the development camp game a few weeks ago. He actually got into a fight in this game, which definitely the Sharks organization as a whole probably enjoys. They definitely like players who have an edge to them. Most organizations, I would say, would like that. And so Rashka, while he was that 7th round pick a couple of years ago, it seems as though the Sharks actually look at him as maybe being something potentially more than that. And so, of course, like I said, Rashka, he's not going to be in the NHL for this upcoming season, but in 2 years, maybe 3 years, he could definitely be a player I foresee being, a fourth liner, like a Jeff VL type of player who comes in and out of the lineup and can play in a sort of net front presence type of role. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks Rookie Faceoff tournament is now officially over. I would say over these 3 games, I was slightly disappointed, I guess you could say. I was expecting a bit more from a player like William Eklund. I was very excited to see his first action as a San Jose Sharks, and while it was decent, it didn't necessarily blow me away, but it'll be interesting to see once training camp picks up in a couple of days and preseason starts in a few more days, how the team really begins to mesh together and who actually is going to make it onto the main roster. Class dismissed.